Today's video is brought to you by Cars and Bids, my online enthusiast car auction site that recently sold this, and this, and this, and this, and this. Check it out at carsandbids.com. This is the new 2024 Mazda CX-90, and it's a mid-size SUV with 3-row seating, a typical family SUV on paper, but in practice it seems a lot more impressive than that. With compelling styling and a gorgeous interior, it brings a lot more luxury to the family SUV than we're usually used to. Today, I'm going to review the CX-90 and show you all of that and all of its quirks and features. All right, time to review the new Mazda CX-90, and I'm going to start with a little overview of this vehicle. Like I said, Mazda's new 3-row family SUV, their flagship model, and it replaces the CX-9, which had been Mazda's 3-row family SUV since 2007. And yes, it's called CX-90, different from the Volvo XC90. You got the CX-90 and the XC90. It shows you just how creative car naming has become. Anyway, the CX-90 shares nothing with the old CX-9 except for 3/4 of its name. New car, new platform, new everything, including powertrains. You have 3 different engine choices in the CX-90. There's a 3.3-liter turbocharged inline 6-cylinder engine that makes either 280 horsepower in the entry-level CX-90 models or 340 horsepower in the S model like this one. Now, Mazda is also offering a plug-in hybrid version of the CX-90 with a turbo 4-cylinder that makes about 325 horsepower, but it only has about 25 miles of full electric range before the gas engine kicks in. Still, it does give you an electric option in a mid-size SUV world that is surprisingly low on them. If you want to plug in and drive on some electric, the CX-90 offers it. As for pricing, that's where the CX-90 starts to get interesting. The base model entry-level CX-90 starts around $41,000. If you want to step up to the plug-in hybrid, that's around $49,000 to start. The S model with the extra power starts around $53,000. And this CX-90, the top-of-the-line S Premium Plus, that's what they call it, this car has a $62,000 sticker price for a Mazda. Now, based on its sizing, you would think that its main competitors would be the Hyundai Palisade, the Kia Telluride, the Toyota Highlander, the Honda Pilot, the Ford Explorer. Basically, the usual suspects in the midsize SUV world. But with pricing like that, the CX-90 is clearly gunning for the low end of the luxury SUV segment too. So think Acura MDX, Lexus RX, maybe even the Volvo XC90 and the Audi Q5 and Q7. The CX-90 is coming. Just for context, the Hyundai Palisade starts around $36,000. This starts around $41,000, and it maxes out in the low 50s. And like I said, this has a $62,000 sticker price. So this is clearly a move up market for Mazda, trying to go after more of a luxury customer than they have before with this new vehicle and its higher pricing to match. So, does the CX-90 deserve its premium pricing? Well, to discuss that, let's start with the exterior, which is, well, frankly, it's gorgeous. In fact, I've had this car parked in front of my house for the last week, a press car that was dropped off, just sitting there, and many neighbors have come up to me and said, wow, what is that? Is that a BMW X7 competitor? Wow, that's a beautiful Mazda. That's a gorgeous car. People I never really talked to have made a point to call out this vehicle's styling, and it really is beautiful. You've got this distinctive long hood line, which gives it extra presence than you might expect from a Mazda. Definitely makes it seem more luxurious and makes it stand out from the others. You also have this surfacing on the side, the curvy touch, the way it looks down the side of the car, I think really gives it an upscale luxury look. You combine that with the generally attractive proportions and no weird design choices, and you have a beautiful, clean looking upscale SUV. And there's some nice trim on the outside that adds to that upscale image, like this chrome going down the bottom, which ends near the rear wheel with the word Mazda just printed there, looking nice. When the car's out driving, the turn signals also add to the luxury feel. You can see they fade. They first turn on and then fade away, then on and then fade. And they do this everywhere, not just in back, but in front also. On and then fade, and even the one on the mirror, on and then fade. And it gives it kind of a luxury look just when you're turning. One interesting attempt at luxury on the outside that I think falls a little flat, this badge on the fender. It's chrome and it says inline 6 on it, which is kind of a strange brag. Most people won't really know what that is. I'm also not entirely sure it's a great benefit, but it says inline 6 on the fender, I guess to brag about the powertrain for whatever reason. Now, with all of those great things to be said about the exterior, there is one glaring drawback I noticed here. The proximity key only works on the front doors, meaning you walk up to the car with the key in your pocket, you pull on the door handle, it unlocks, but only in front, not in back, which is a big miss. If you're a parent carrying a child trying to load it into a car seat, you don't really want to have to get the key fob out of your pocket, press the button, and then open the door. It should be on all four doors, especially at this price level. But you will forget that complaint, at least temporarily, when you get inside the CX-90 and look around, because it is beautiful in here. This car is intended to be a luxury competitor. Well, it has a luxury interior. This gorgeous patterned cloth on the dashboard, far better than plastic or even stitched leather, and they continue it onto the door panel where it looks great. You can also see this light wood, natural feeling, not ugly and glossy. It looks great, it feels great to touch, a great addition to the center console and the door panel, as you can see. And aluminum trim all throughout on the dashboard, going across the whole thing, and used over on the door panel to really emphasize this car's luxury look and feel. Of course, leather everywhere too, including obviously the seats on this top-end model, and they also have this piece of cloth down the center with a cool texture on it that draws your eyes to it, makes it look like something more special than just a usual leather seat. Gorgeous touches, gorgeous materials, really beautiful in terms of quality in here. Clearly a different level than even a top-end Hyundai Palisade or Toyota Highlander, a different level of luxury in the CX-90. Of course, you might expect that given that this is the top-of-the-line model with that $62,000 sticker price. You're probably thinking, for that money, it had better deliver a beautiful interior. Well, the good news is, it does. With that said, when you move past the initial surprise at how nice it is in here, and you start looking around and poking at all the little details, you do start to notice some drawbacks. Not big ones, but minor ones in various places, especially if you've spent time in other luxury SUVs. For example, the gear selector is not electronic. You have to physically move it into place from park over to reverse and then down into drive where it stays. This may not seem like a big deal, but it's less safe than an electronic gear lever where you open the door and it automatically shifts into park so the car can't possibly roll away, which happens more than you'd think. Basically, every luxury SUV and most midsize family SUVs have switched to an electronic gear lever, but not here. Here's another complaint. The infotainment system locks you out from using the touchscreen if the car is in touchscreen drive. Instead, you have to use these controls in the center console, this dial here and the buttons that surround it, which is obviously a clunkier solution than using the touchscreen. Mazda claims that it's safer to use these controls, these buttons, which is funny because they didn't use the electronic gear selector, which is also safer, but more importantly, it's just more annoying. People are used to using touchscreens, and having to use these controls separate from the screen just adds some complexity. More importantly, the infotainment system just isn't really all that great. It's not a huge screen, but even beyond that, the operation isn't amazing. For one thing, there's no home screen at all. You press home and you're taken to this like list of places where you can go. It would be nice to see a 3-panel home screen that shows like the time, your navigation, your music, so you can sit there and look at all that stuff at once. It doesn't have it. In fact, you can't even do 2 things at once here. If you're on the navigation screen, you can't also have music up like basically everyone else, and certainly all luxury models. It's just a little bit of a disappointment and clunkier to use than rivals since they lock you out of the touchscreen. And it doesn't get better in the gauge cluster screen, unfortunately. You have a beautiful gauge cluster screen with a nice layout in here, but it's not really configurable at all. This little part of it is the only thing that you can adjust, and you can't even make this gauge cluster screen show you your music or your phone use, let alone a full screen map like so many luxury brand rivals. Definitely a miss in this car in terms of technology, which I suspect will be noticed by people cross-shopping this with real luxury brand SUVs. One other tech feature that I find falls short compared to rivals, and especially luxury brand rivals, is the driver assist tech. You turn it on and the car will steer for you on the freeway, accelerate, brake based on the car in front of you, which is great and which all rivals do, and this works just as well. The problem is that after a while it wants you to grab the steering wheel again, but it's not a capacitive touch steering wheel. So you can't just rest your hand on the wheel even if you are paying attention. You got to kind of jiggle it to let the car know you're there, which is old school technology. Most other cars you can just let your hand sit there and it knows that you're monitoring things. You also can't make lane changes with this driver assist tech. You put on the turn signal, it won't make the lane change for you. You got to do that manually. Some rivals have that, some don't, but this one doesn't either. Now, I'm not saying these are all bad things with the CX-90, but Mazda trying to move up market into luxury territory, these are some things you got to solve and improve before you can really get there, especially when you're already coming in with the deficit of the Mazda kind of mainstream name brand. Now, there are some nice benefits up here. Obviously, I already mentioned the beautiful materials in this interior, but there's more than just that. The climate controls are located here and separate from the infotainment screen, so you don't have to use the clunky infotainment controls to adjust the temperature, turn on the heated seats. They all have dedicated buttons, which obviously is nice. The drive mode selector is right here, this switch in the center console, and it is beautiful. One of the nicest drive mode selectors I've seen. Push it up or down to go from sport to normal to eco, but mostly just look at it because it looks very nice. I also love in the center console you have this button here which instantly pulls up the camera system. That can make it a lot easier to park. Of course, when you go into reverse, the camera automatically comes up, but if you're trying to park in a tight space and you haven't shifted into reverse, having easy access to the cameras with a simple button is a great feature. Now, with that said, I do wish that the rear view mirror was a camera system like it is in so many other cars now, including the Hyundai Palisade, the Kia Telluride, 2 big rivals to this. A mirror camera means you have perfect visibility even if there are people sitting in the seats or the cargo area is full, and so a traditional normal mirror, well, it's not quite as safe. And next we move on to the back seat in the CX-90, which is of course an important place since most people buying this will be using it to shuttle around families, so they'll be using the back seat a lot. First thing worth noting, the rear door opens basically 90 degrees, giving you a massively large opening to load in kids, car seats, whatever you might want. You don't usually see that. It's nice to have such a wide opening door, and it's a pretty cool idea that adds to to the practicality. As for rear seat room, it's excellent back here. Good space for knees, legs, hips, head, exactly like you'd expect from a well-sized midsize SUV. You got a lot of room in back. Now, this particular CX-90 features a captain's chairs configuration, meaning you get 2 seats here in the second row, 2 individual seats. And in between them, you have this center console area, which has some nice benefits, specifically an armrest on top. In fact, individual armrests for both rear seats. You can open those up and you get access to a storage area, which is nice. And of course, ahead of that, you have cup holders, 2 individual. And at the base of this center console, you have more storage. You can pull out this drawer and put stuff in your CX-90. And the luxury doesn't end there. No. You also have the same beautiful materials in back that you had up front. On the door panel, this gorgeous patterned cloth like you had on the dashboard in front, and also the light wood and the aluminum trim, all of which looks great, especially together. Very luxurious. The door panel also includes a built-in rear sunshade. So you pull on this tab, you can lift it up and clip it into place, which is nice if you have a toddler or an infant. You don't want bright sunlight shining on them. This is built directly into the door, so you can avoid that. Pretty cool. And there's still more nice stuff back here, specifically rear seat climate vents in the center, as you can see. Right below that, 2 USB-C ports for charging devices. And right below that, a full set of climate controls. So you can adjust temperature, fan speed, where the air is coming. You even have heated and cooled rear seats here in the second row, which is another nice luxury benefit back here. Now, as for the third row in the CX-90, access is, well, kind of mixed. Having this center console here in the second row adds some luxury and convenience touches, but it means you can't just walk past the captain's chairs in the middle and go into the third row. You actually have to fold down the seats, which isn't always ideal. Sometimes if you have a car seat in the seat, it's easier to just have a kid walk through the center. But if you can easily fold the second row, it's very simple to do. You have this latch on the side of the seat, you pull it, and then the seat folds forward and moves forward to allow a space where you can easily get to the third row. And that latch is accessible to both people in the third row if they're trying to climb out, and anyone on the outside of the car if they're trying to climb in. Simple, easy to get back there. Now, once you're in the third row, you'll discover one interesting thing: only 2 seats back here. A lot of 3-row SUVs have 2 seats up front, 2 in the middle, and then 3 in the back for a seating capacity of 7, but not this one. It's 2, 2, 2 for 6 seats. Now, I suspect there are CX-90 models that have a bench seat in the second row for 3 seats across, but you don't get those 3 seats in the third row, which is different from how some brands do it. Now, of course, the third row is relatively small, as they always are, but good enough for children. You also have USB-C ports back here for charging devices, which is nice, and cup holders in back for, well, drinks, which is also nice. You do not have heated third row seats, which the new Hyundai Palisade and Kia Telluride do have. You'd expect it in this ultra luxury Mazda, but not back there. No heated seats for your rear seat kids. And another luxury item you don't get in the third row of the CX-90 is power folding seats, which I'm especially surprised to see, because every brand that wants you to think their luxurious model is ultra high-end sticks some power folding third row seats in there, and it's a cool party trick, but not here. Now, to be clear, manual folding seats, it's way quicker. You pull a latch, you push the seat down, and it's down, instead of standing there holding a button for like 20 seconds. But you can't do it one-handed. You got to pull with one hand, push with the other, which can be a little bit annoying compared to the power fold. Now, with that said, there are some nice features back here, including 2 charge ports, 1 cigarette lighter style and 1 household style charge port, which is always nice to have in the interior to charge various devices beyond just USB-C. Love to see that in this car. You also have decent storage space behind the third row. Not huge, but big enough, especially considering it's after 3 rows of seats. Although one interesting drawback, when you lift up the load floor, you don't see another large storage compartment like in so many other SUVs. It's all segmented up into these different groups. So if there's something bigger you want to put down here, you're probably out of luck unless it fits into one of these containers. Now, one other important thing to point out on the subject of size, the CX-90 is pretty big. It is quite long at about 202 inches in length. That probably doesn't mean anything to you, but get this, the CX-90 is 7 inches longer than the Toyota Highlander. It's 5 inches longer than the Hyundai Palisade, 3 inches longer than the Ford Explorer, 2 inches longer than the Honda Pilot. You get my point. This is probably the biggest midsize SUV. So get ready for a slightly larger experience in terms of parking and maneuvering in tight spaces if you get a CX-90 over its midsize SUV rivals. All right, driving the Mazda CX-90. So exciting. Actually, it is reasonably exciting. Turbo 6-cylinder, straight 6, with 340 horsepower in this version. I'm not a big believer in this whole thing that car journalists say that Mazdas drive so much better than other cars. I think if you drive a CX-5, it drives a lot like all the other small crossovers, which is to say, kinda dull. But this car is different. The powertrain is excellent. 340 horsepower is a lot more than virtually all rivals, and it feels honestly like even more than that. It is surprisingly potent, especially when you consider the size of this car. I think one thing Mazda has done masterfully with this powertrain is the responsiveness. Usually that's something you associate with a V8 or a big engine. This is a relatively small turbo inline 6, and yet you put your foot down, you have instant torque. The car shifts quite quickly to get you going. I am quite impressed with the powertrain, just every aspect of it, and the fuel economy numbers are pretty good too. So there's that, and there's also this. I actually think this steers and handles better than rivals as well. Again, generally speaking, I don't find that to be quite as true as it's hyped up about Mazdas, and most of these mid-size SUVs don't steer and handle like much of anything. But this has more responsive steering. It has less body roll and actually is more engaging to drive. To back up this powertrain, you actually have kind of a nice driving experience. And I know this for sure because I just had a Hyundai Palisade here, which I also reviewed. Not sure if that video's gone up yet, but that is a very excellent, very competent car, but it doesn't drive like this one. This has more power, feels sportier, quicker steering, more responsive, just simply better to drive, this CX-90. But this car is kind of a weird conundrum for me. It's kind of in an odd spot because it does some things a lot better than you'd expect and a lot better than rivals, and then it does some things not better at all. So the way it looks is better than the other midsize SUVs. And I say that even knowing that Telluride and Palisade are good looking. This is better. Better looking than the Explorer, which is also a nice looking SUV. This is a handsome vehicle. And it's handsome inside, just gorgeous materials. It just seems nicer than almost anything else that's out there, especially at this price point. It really is a high quality, nice, luxury vehicle. And then you have the driving experience, which, like I said, is great. The drawbacks come with all the other stuff, little things that Mazda has missed. Like I mentioned, the tech is really not all that good. The infotainment system, I mean, clearly was designed for lesser vehicles and tried to adapt to a luxury model like this. It doesn't work. It's just not as good. The gauge cluster screen situation as well, just not as good. The tech is simply not as good, and that goes for the driver assist also, like I mentioned. At the end of the day, this vehicle looks great on the outside, it looks great on the inside, and it drives great, but it's not there to deliver some of the little stuff. The proximity key for the back door, the power folding third row seats. It should have this stuff if it's trying to be like the value play in this segment. And I think what's interesting is that Hyundai and Kia have always done that. They've gone after value, but by loading their cars full of stuff, full of tech. Mazda has decided to go after value, but by loading it full of quality, nice materials, nice styling, and being a little down on tech. Some people will like that. Some people get in here and say, this thing is beautiful, it's the nicest car you can buy at this price, but I'm buying it. But some people are going to get in and say, hey, the technology in this really could be better, especially at this dollar value, and I understand that. So you got to kind of make a choice with the CX-90. Is it worth making some compromises and some sacrifices in terms of like convenience and usability features to have what is surely the nicest and nicest looking and nicest driving mid-size SUV? Maybe so. I mean, some people will definitely think so. Others will want the tech and may want something cheaper. This is pretty expensive. And I get that. And so there's a bit of a pro-con here. Certainly not walking away thinking this is the best midsize SUV, but it is best in some areas and not so great in others. It's interesting. And so that's the new 2024 Mazda CX-90. This is a really nice family SUV, surprisingly so. Excellent, luxurious, but it's also pretty expensive. At least this version, it's starting to enter real luxury brand territory. Audi, Mercedes-Benz, Lexus. So is a Mazda worth it? Time to give the CX-90 a DougScore to find out. And the DougScore is here, 52 out of 100, which places the CX-90 here against some three-row SUV rivals. The CX-90 beats out the major competitors like the Hyundai Palisade and Honda Pilot, but mainly only due to the weekend categories where the CX-90's strong acceleration and attractive looks give it a boost. In the daily scores, however, the Palisade and the Pilot have an advantage with more equipment and better pricing, and while the CX-90 is a great combination of a lot of stuff, I suspect the Palisade, Telluride, and Pilot would serve most SUV shoppers a bit better for typical family duties.